Eve. Some people warn you before they change everything. They raise their voice, they posture. They make sure you see it coming. And then there are the others, Eve. The ones who've already been through the kind of fire that burns everything away except what matters. The ones who don't threaten, because threatening is for people who aren't sure, Eve. The ones who stand completely still while the room gets loud around them. And you don't realize until it's too late that stillness wasn't weakness, it was discipline. 8 years of it, Eve. She walked onto that range on a Tuesday afternoon in worn boots and a faded jacket. Nobody looked twice. Nobody asked what she carried, Eve. Nobody saw the small compass etched behind her left ear. The mark you only earn when you've done things that never make it into any official report. They saw a woman alone at a shooting bay, Eve. They saw exactly what she needed them to see. They should have walked the other way, Eve. The VA clinic on Rancho del Oro smelled like floor wax and recycled air, and the particular quiet of places where people waited to hear things they already knew, Eve. Maren Voss sat in a plastic chair by the window, 3rd row, 2nd seat from the left, same spot every time, far enough from the door that no one could sit behind her, Eve. Close enough to the window that she could track the parking lot without appearing to try. Old habits. The kind that don't switch off just because the uniform is gone, Eve. She was 29 years old. She looked older. Not because she'd aged badly, because she'd aged honestly. There's a difference, Eve. The women in the waiting room with their appointment reminders and their soft hands, they aged the way most people do, gradually, gently, with the luxury of sleeping through the night, Eve. Maren had aged the other way, the way desert wind ages sandstone. Pressure and heat and time doing their work until what's left is harder than what started, Eve. Her left boot was laced tighter than her right. Always, the tension distributed pressure differently across the foot. Small adjustment, Eve. It had taken her 6 months to figure out after the shrapnel came out and the nerve damage stayed, Eve. The doctor at the time, a careful man who chose his words like a man selecting tools from a tray, had explained the prognosis with the particular gentleness reserved for permanent things, Eve. The doctor today was younger, Dr. Patel. He had the look of someone who'd graduated medical school approximately 15 minutes ago and was still surprised when patients disagreed with him, Eve. He sat across from her with a tablet in his lap and the expression of someone about to recommend something she wasn't going to follow. The inflammation markers are up again, he said, Eve. Maren looked out the window. A blue pickup truck pulled into the parking lot. An older man got out slowly, using the door frame for leverage. He made it to the sidewalk, straightened up, Eve. Kept walking, she understood that. I'd strongly recommend limiting consecutive weight-bearing activity, Patel said. 30 minutes maximum. The tissue. I know what the tissue does, Eve, she said. I was there when it happened. He made a note. She didn't feel guilty about it, Eve. She felt the way she always felt in this building, like she was occupying space. Someone else needed more. She signed the discharge paperwork, thanked him, meant it, mostly, Eve. Walked out into the California sun, Eve. The drive to Oceanside Public Range took 11 minutes. Her hands did the turns before her brain decided to. Left on mission. Right on Douglas, Eve. Through the gap in the eucalyptus where the road narrowed, and the smell changed from salt air to dry sage and gun oil, she parked in the far corner, sat with both hands on the wheel, Eve. Because today was September 14th, 6 years since Leland Pruitt died on a training range in peacetime. Not a battlefield, not enemy contact. A training accident in 2018 at Camp Pendleton. Equipment failure. A series of small decisions that compounded in 3 seconds into something irreversible. He was 38 years old, He had a voice like Tennessee gravel and a way of being right about things without making you feel stupid for having been wrong. He called her Voss, except for the 2 times he didn't, He was the best spotter she'd ever worked with. She had never told him that. She knew that. She got out of the car. The rental Glock 19 at Bay 7 felt like a compromise, She had her own weapons at home. But on this particular day, on this particular errand, she didn't want to use her own. This was ritual, not sport, She loaded the magazine the way she always had. Not quickly, not slowly. Each round seated with deliberate pressure, a pause between, a breath. It was meditative, It was the closest thing she had to prayer. She fired through 2 magazines, didn't score herself. Every round where she intended it. She knew without checking, She was reloading the 3rd magazine when the voice came from her left. You look like you know what you're doing. She didn't look up, Because here was the thing about a certain kind of man in a certain kind of setting. They always announced themselves with a compliment that was actually an evaluation, You look like you know what you're doing. Translation: I'm deciding whether you're worth my time. She seated the magazine. For a civilian, the voice added. She looked up, Staff Sergeant Cord Willhite stood 6 feet away, arms loose at his sides, a $100 bill folded between 2 fingers like a card trick he'd rehearsed. 33 years old, Broad through the shoulders, the kind of face that had been handsome before certainty settled into it and made it something harder. He wore his confidence the way some men wear rank, not as clothing, as identity. Behind him, 3 Marines, young, grinning, orbiting him the way things orbit something with more gravity. One of them, Lance Corporal Briggs, early 20s, baby-faced in a way that made him look perpetually surprised. Was not grinning. He was watching her hands. Her grip, the angle of her elbows, He was the only one paying attention to the right things. 5 shots, Willhite said. 5 targets. You beat my group, that's yours. He lifted the bill. You don't, You buy the first round at O'Brien's. Maren looked at him, then at the bill. Then back, I'm not interested, she said, and went back to her magazine. Silence, the uncomfortable kind. The kind that happens when someone gives the wrong answer to a question they were supposed to find flattering. She felt Willhite recalibrate, The small adjustment in posture, the decision about what face to show next. Fair enough, he said, smooth, practiced ease. Can't blame a person for knowing their limits. There it is, She didn't react. She was good at not reacting, She'd been good at it since she was 7 years old in the Arizona desert, while her father reloaded a magazine without a word and handed it back. And the implicit lesson was, your feelings are information, not instruction. She fired 3 more rounds. Dead center. Dead center. Willhite didn't leave. She knew he wouldn't, Men who'd built entire architectures of self around being the most capable person in any given room. They didn't leave when someone ignored the performance. They escalated, because leaving meant the audience had seen them be dismissed. Rifles marksmanship instructor, he said. 9 years. MCRD San Diego. A pause that was supposed to land like a credential, Just so you know who you're turning down. I didn't turn you down, Maren said. I said I'm not interested. What's the difference? She set the gun down, ejected the magazine, locked the slide back. looked at him directly for the first time. "You're trying to find out how good I am," she said. "I already know how good I am. So there's nothing in this for me, Eve." Silence again. Different kind this time. Behind Willhite, Briggs had stopped grinning entirely. "Eve." She went back to shooting. Willhite stayed for another 30 seconds. She tracked it without looking, then moved back to Bay 5. She fired through the last magazine, 5 rounds. Eve. 5 targets, every round where she put it. She began breaking the weapon down for return. "Excuse me." Different voice, younger. Uncertain in a way Willhite's never was, she turned. Eve. The young Marine standing a respectful distance away was not Briggs. Taller, darker eyes. The posture of someone used to being told he was standing wrong. "Private First Class Stellan Judd," Eve, he said. "Ma'am," she waited. He cleared his throat. "I don't want to," he stopped. Started over. "Did you ever serve with a gunnery sergeant named Leland Pruitt, Eve?" The range kept making noise, shots from other bays. The mechanical whir of a target carrier. Maren didn't move. "Where'd you hear that name?" she said. "Sniper school. 2016, Eve." "He was an instructor. I was cycling through." He looked at the ground. "Back up. He talked about you. Not a lot, but enough. I've been looking for you for about 2 years. 2 years, Eve." She looked at him. 26, maybe. Didn't have the look of someone running a play. Had the look of someone who'd been carrying something too long and had finally found the right address. "Eve." "Not today," she said. His face flickered. "Whatever it is," she said. "Not today." She picked up the rental weapon and walked it back to the counter. "Eve." She sat in her car in the parking lot for 6 minutes, watched the entrance. "Eve." Watched the ordinary Friday afternoon business of people who had come here for recreations and not for the complicated ritual of remembering someone who should still be alive. "Eve." Her phone buzzed. "Master Sergeant Darnell Okafor." She answered. "Someone sent you a video," she said. 3 videos. His voice. Georgia low, unhurried. "Eve." The cadence of a man who'd seen enough that he no longer performed urgency. "Cord Willhite, you want to tell me what that was about?" "Nothing." "Uh-huh, Eve." She watched a group of Marines file out through the range entrance. Willhite at the back. He didn't look toward the parking lot. "He put in for training director," Okafor said. "I know, Eve." A pause. "You know, heard about it last month. And nothing." "It's not my business, Maren." His voice changed, the Georgia cadence slowing down. "Eve." Which always meant something heavier was coming. "There were 2 women before you, both qualified. Both left within 6 months of joining his unit. Neither filed a formal complaint, Eve." The parking lot was quieter now. Both transfer requests used almost identical phrasing, Okafor said, like they'd been told what to write. She was quiet. "Eve. If Willhite gets that directorship, he designs the advanced marksmanship curriculum for every female Marine candidate in this region for the next 5 years, Eve." The logic arranged itself without effort. Neat. Unavoidable. He doesn't just push one person out. He builds the door. "What do you need from me?" she said. "Eve." "Nothing you're not willing to give, Okafor." "There's a course," he said. "Weapons Training Battalion. Monday. 0800. I can get you sponsored." She looked at the range entrance. "Eve." Thought about Dr. Patel's careful voice. The damage isn't reversible. Thought about 2 women who'd written identical transfer requests. Eve. Thought about a 26-year-old carrying a letter for 2 years. "I'll be there," she said. Eve. She didn't go home right away. Drove south on the 5 with the windows down. Past the marine layer sitting low over the coast. Eve. The smell of salt and diesel and the freedom of being in motion with no one needing anything from her. She thought about her father not often, not in the sentimental way, but on days with weight, days where the past came close enough to touch. She thought about the desert behind their house in Prescott, and the way he'd set up cans on the far fence post and handed her the rifle without ceremony. She was 7. The rifle was bigger than made sense. She'd missed the first 30 shots by margins that should have been embarrassing. Her father didn't let her feel embarrassed, He just reloaded and handed it back. No instructions. No corrections. By sunset, she'd hit the can. He didn't congratulate her, He looked at it for a moment, the can lying in the dirt 50 yards away, and said in the flat Arizona voice that had shaped every sentence she'd ever heard, "Good. Now do it again tomorrow, She'd thought about that sentence 1,000 times. In recruit training when everything hurt. In the mountains of Helmand when the cold got into the marrow, In the medevac with her boot off and Pruitt's voice above her saying, "Stop moving, Voss, I swear to God." Good. Now do it again tomorrow. It wasn't cruelty, It was the most honest thing anyone had ever said to her. One good shot wasn't an accident. It was the beginning of a pattern. She'd built her entire life around that sentence, She got home at 7:40. Small house, rented, a back porch that faced west and caught the last hour of sunlight. Before she got out of the car, she opened the glove box. Still there, Always there, a Marine Corps identification card. Old, a cabinet separating at one corner. She tried to fix it with clear tape and made it worse. Staff Gunnery Sergeant Leland Pruitt, The photo was bad, the way all military ID photos were bad. Harsh flash, no expression. The look of someone told exactly how to face the camera and obeying without enthusiasm. But it was him, the jaw. The slight tilt of the head that meant he was about to say something dry and completely accurate. She held it for a moment, then put it back, got out, went inside, Sunday passed the way Sundays did. 4 miles in the morning, managing the pace so the left leg never loaded past the threshold, where the ache became something more specific, She cleaned her weapons, ate a meal she couldn't describe an hour later, sat on the back porch, and watched the light change. What came wasn't sentimentality. What came was clarity. 2 women, Same phrasing on the transfer requests. Identical. She knew what that meant. The slow erosion. A skilled manipulator didn't shout, didn't threaten, didn't leave marks, They created conditions that were slightly wrong, graded you on your response to the wrongness, without acknowledging they'd created it. Until leaving felt like your idea, Willhite hadn't forced anyone out. He'd made them believe they'd chosen to go. She went to bed early. Set her alarm for 05:45. Put the Pruitt ID card face down on the nightstand. Didn't sleep for a long time. Monday came with fog, Pacific fog, heavy, the thick kind that sat on the ground and made the world feel 10 feet wide. She drove through it with the heater running low, and Camp Pendleton's gate appearing out of the gray, like something surfacing from below. Zell 7:45. Okafor was waiting on the other side of the gate. Civilian clothes. Here the way a person is here when they owe someone something they've never found the right way to say. "You look good, he said. "You look nervous," she said. "I'm not nervous. Your jaw is doing the thing." He consciously relaxed his jaw. "Willhite knows you're coming. He spent the weekend on the course, "I know. He invited 20 instructors to watch. Of course he did." They walked toward range 208. The fog starting to lift at the edges. "This isn't just about the range today, Okafor said quietly. You know that, I know. He's going to use whatever happens as Okafor. She stopped, looked at him. I've been shot at by people who were actively trying to kill me, Eve. In terrain designed to make that easy. A pause. I'm not worried about a course. He looked at her for a moment, nodded once. They kept walking, Eve. Range 208 sat at the eastern edge of the complex. Long, functional, a covered observation deck along one side. 20 Marine instructors stood in a loose cluster near the deck, all of them evaluating without appearing to. Cord Willhite stood at the center of the range floor. He'd used the weekend well, 6 stations in sequence, each with different geometry, different demands. Station 1, close quarters pistol work. Station 6, a long stretch of open ground leading to a steel target barely visible in the lifting fog. 200 meters at least, iron sights. Probably gusting. Willhite turned when he heard them approach. Composed, professional, the expression of a man who'd built something he was proud of and had decided to be gracious about it. Voss, he said. Willhite, she said. Same register. Okafor stepped forward, Master Sergeant Okafor, acting as independent observer and range safety. Willhite's eyes moved between them. Calculating, fine, he said. Then to Maren, 6 stations. Timed, 30-minute cap. More than 3 misses and you're done. He paused. You can withdraw at any point. I won't, she said. He almost smiled. The course isn't designed for. He stopped, chose another word. Adjustments. I don't need adjustments, she said. Flot, even. Final. He gestured toward the starting line. She walked to it, She stood at the line for 10 seconds before the signal. 10 seconds was enough. She found her breathing. Found the number. 58 beats per minute, She'd learned to locate that number in Helmand at 22 years old, lying in a hide site in 43-degree heat, watching a compound for 11 hours, She knew what it felt like when her heart rate was operational. 58 was operational. It was the number she'd held when Pruitt got hit, When the medevac was 11 minutes out, and she had both hands on his shoulder, and his blood was going somewhere it shouldn't, She'd talked to him in the calm, deliberate voice of someone doing the only available useful thing. Stay with me. I've got you. Stay with me. He'd been angry about it afterward, which was how she'd known he was going to be fine. You should have maintained position, he'd said from the German hospital bed. I did maintain position, she'd said. Right next to you, He'd looked at her, then away, then, yeah, okay. Like he'd decided something and didn't need to explain it. The signal came. She moved, Station 1 pistol transitions, 3 targets at 15 meters. She raised the Glock, front sight, trigger press. 3 shots under 4 seconds, all center mass, Her left leg loaded on the pivot ached. She noted it, filed it, moved. Station 2, a barricade shooting. 4 targets at 25 meters from cover, The geometry of cover was something her body understood, at a level below thought. 4 shots. Station 3. Moving steel plates at 30 meters. The design disadvantage, She could see it now that she was in it. The spacing forced hard lateral movement, quick direction changes, weight transfer that would punish any asymmetry in the lower body, He did his research, not bitterly, factually. She tracked the first plate, fired, tracked the second, fired. The third required a hard left pivot. The left leg loaded fully, For less than half a second, the signal spiked, sharp, specific, the kind that had a sound if you let it. She didn't let it. She fired. The steel rang. From the observation deck, Briggs watched her weight distribution on that pivot. The micro adjustment. her right foot absorbing the load her left couldn't carry. The correction so fast it was almost invisible. Almost his expression changed. Station 4. Low light simulation. Targets backlit in red. She'd spent 6 months in Afghanistan, where darkness was a working environment. 4 targets. 4 shots. Time 5 stress fire with a timer, buzzer. Weapon up. 3 targets in 2 seconds, reset. Buzzer again. 4 iterations, the left leg was in full complaint now, not sharp. Sustained. Accumulating like a sound getting incrementally louder until you realize you've been straining to hear everything else over it. Breathe, she thought. She talked to him in her head when the work got hard. Not grief, not delusion, orientation. Breathe. Front sight. Press 12 rounds, 12 hits. She moved to Station 6. 200 meters. The fog had lifted almost completely. The steel target caught the morning light. A dull gleam at distance. Iron sights. M4 carbine, wind running left to right. 14 miles per hour. Slight gust. She made the adjustment before she picked up the rifle. She brought it up, found the sight picture, the left leg, on fire. Genuinely, insistently. The kind of signal that in a clinical setting would generate words like cessation of activity on a form she would sign and then disregard. She breathed out, found 58. She thought about Morrow, about the 2 identical transfer requests, about what it meant to build authority and use it to narrow the door behind you. She thought about the only sentence that had ever held up under real pressure. Good. Now do it again tomorrow. She pressed the trigger. The steel rang. 200 meters. 14-mile crosswind. Iron sights. 1 shot. Okfor's voice carried across the range like a hand on a shoulder. 22 minutes. 0 misses. The silence that followed was the specific silence of 20 experienced professionals simultaneously recalibrating their expectations. Then someone started clapping. The kind that starts before the person knows they've decided to do it. Others joined. Maren set the rifle down. Ejected the magazine. Locked the slide. Cleared the weapon with the same economy she'd used on the rental Glock 2 days ago. No fanfare. No acknowledgement of the applause. She looked down range, the steel target. 200 meters away, still rocking from the impact. She did not look at Willhite. From the observation deck, Briggs turned to the Marine beside him. "Did you see her leg?" he said quietly. Station 3, the lateral. She loaded it wrong on the pivot, a pause. She was in pain that whole course. The other Marine looked at Maren. At the 22-minute timer still displayed on the range clock. "Yeah," he said, after a long moment. "Yeah, I think she was." Okafor walked over. "Guest instructor," he said. "Advanced marksmanship. The offer's real." Maren looked at the target line. Not an answer. Not yet. Across the range, Willhite sat alone on a bench near the starting line. Arms crossed. His face doing something she couldn't read from here. Something between processing and reckoning. Briggs found him 10 minutes later. Sat down without being invited. "Sergeant," a pause. She was hurt the whole course. Her left leg. You could see it on the lateral at Station 3, 0 misses, 22 minutes. While she was hurt, he paused. "I think we were wrong." Sergeant, simply. Without accusation. The honest statement of someone young enough that honesty still cost something. Willhite sat with it. The fog was completely gone. The California morning, sharp and clear. The kind of light that left nowhere comfortable to hide. He sat with it for a long time. Then Judd found Maren at the edge of the range. In his hand, an envelope. Off-white. Worn at the corners the way things get worn from being carried, not from age. I've had this for 2 years, he said. She looked at it. He wrote it in 2016, Judd said. Gave it to me near the end of the school cycle. He said if something ever happened to him and I could find you. He stopped. He said he wasn't good at saying things directly when it mattered. He thought he'd have more time to get better at it. She looked at the handwriting on the front print, slightly too large. The handwriting of someone told their cursive was illegible who had overcorrected. She reached out, took it, lighter than she expected, did not open it, not here. Not yet. Thank you, she gave. Judd nodded, stepped back, gave her the distance the moment required. She stood there for a while, envelope in her hands, range quiet around her, her left leg, present, familiar, aching. 58 good, she thought. Now do it again tomorrow. She didn't open the envelope that night. It sat on the kitchen table, where she could see it from every room that mattered. From the couch, from the back porch, from the sink where she stood each morning with coffee and the particular silence of a house that had never quite filled with sound. She wasn't avoiding it. That's what she told herself. She was waiting for the right conditions, the right hour, the right version of herself that could hold what was inside without something cracking. Except she'd been waiting 6 years to be the right version of herself, and she was starting to think that version wasn't coming separately. Maybe it arrived with the thing. Maybe it arrived because of the thing. She left the envelope on the table, went to bed, did not open it. Tuesday morning, Okafor called at 0730. Willhite got his personnel board moved up, he said. Convene is Thursday. The training director decision could land before end of week. Maren set down her coffee. How? She said. Someone with rank expedited it. If this goes through before anyone formally documents Monday's performance, Monday doesn't exist on paper. It was an unofficial range visit. No formal evaluation, no file. A pause. Maren, I heard you. There's something else. His voice shifted, the Georgia cadence getting slower. One of the 2 women, Sergeant First Class Delia Morrow, Fort Irwin. I talked to her last night. He paused. She's willing to put something on record. She said she's been waiting for someone to ask. She's been waiting 3 years for someone to ask. The weight of that was specific and familiar. The weight of women who'd carried something in silence because nobody had extended the simple courtesy of a direct question. Set up the meeting, Maren said. She drove to base at 10:00. Down the hallway, past the institutional smell of every military building she'd ever entered, past the photograph, Helmand province, a group photograph outside a forward operating base. Sand on everything. The ancient flat Afghan light, Pruitt, 3rd from left. Squinting at the camera with the expression of a man told to smile who'd decided against it on principle. She stood there for 3 seconds. Okafor waited. She kept walking. Lieutenant Colonel Hargrove was 51 years old and had the posture of someone who'd decided long ago she was going to take up exactly the amount of space she was entitled to. She gestured to the chairs across from her desk. Master Sergeant Okafor tells me you ran the 208 course Monday, she said. No preamble. Yes, ma'am. 22 minutes. 0 misses. Yes, ma'am. Hargrove looked at her. I've had active duty Marines with full physical clearance run that course in 28. The course was well designed, Maren said. Staff Sergeant Willhite is technically excellent. Something in Hargrove's expression opened 1 inch. "You're not here to talk about the course," she said. "No, ma'am, Eve." "Tell me what you're here to talk about." Maren talked for 14 minutes, no editorializing, Eve. No words like hostile or systematic, because those were conclusions, and Hargrove was an officer who'd spent her career distinguishing between conclusions and evidence. She gave evidence, Eve. 2 transfer requests, identical phrasing, timeline, both women within 6 months of joining Willhite's unit. Sergeant First Class Delia Morrow at Fort Irwin. Waiting chronological, Eve. Specific. No weight added that wasn't already there. When she finished, the room was quiet. Staff Sergeant Willhite's personnel board is Thursday, Hargrove said. I know, Eve. If I postpone it pending inquiry, he'll know why. Yes, ma'am. There's a difference between being the best in the room, Maren said, Eve, and making sure the room's small enough. You always are. Hargrove sat with that, her hands flat on the desk. She looked at them for a moment. Then back up, Eve. I'll contact Sergeant First Class Morrow directly, she said. Master Sergeant Okafor. Formal request for both transfer files, Eve. This does not leave this office until I say so. Understood, Okafor said. Hargrove looked at Maren. You're doing the right thing, she said. I'm doing the only thing, ma'am, Maren said. Eve. She was in the parking lot when Briggs found her, civvies, off duty. The expression of someone who'd made a decision and was mildly surprised to find himself acting on it. Voss, he said, Eve. She stopped. I'm sorry, he said, directly. No build-up. Sunday at the range. And Monday. I laughed at something Willhite said when you walked up. He stopped. That's not an excuse, Eve. She looked at him. You noticed the leg, she said. Yes, Station 3. The lateral. Yes, you didn't say anything. I didn't know if... I didn't want you to say anything, she said, Eve. That's correct. A pause. The noticing was enough. He absorbed that. Can I ask you something? He said. She waited. The course Willhite designed, Eve. He put the lateral movement at Station 3 specifically. I watched him set it up Friday afternoon. Briggs paused. He knew about the leg. Didn't he? She looked at him for a long moment, Eve. He knew something was asymmetric in my gait, she said. He didn't need the specifics. She looked toward the building. That's not the worst part. He waited, Eve. The worst part is it wasn't malicious. Not really. He genuinely believed the course was fair. He built his entire framework around what he can do, Eve. Anything that looks different from that gets filed under less than. He doesn't even see it anymore. Briggs looked at the building. Is that fixable? He said, Eve. The question of someone 22 years old, who still believed in the possibility of fixable. I don't know, she said. Honest. Because she didn't, Eve. Wednesday. 4 a.m. she was already awake. Okafor called at 0600. Willhite knows, he said. How? Someone talked. He went to the range this morning. 0430, Eve. Alone. Range officers said he ran the 208 course 4 times. She was quiet 4 times. In the dark, by himself. He's not stupid, she said. No, he's scared. A pause. Yeah, Eve. I think that's right. She sat on the edge of the bed. The envelope was still on the kitchen table. She could see it from the doorway. Off-white. Worn at the corners. Waiting, Eve. The board's been postponed, Okafor said. Hargrove moved it this morning? How'd he take it? Like a man who just realized the ground shifted and doesn't know which way, Eve. She looked at the envelope. Darnell, she said, yeah, after Helmand. When Pruitt was in the hospital in Germany. Did you go see him? A long silence. Yes, he said, Eve. Did he say anything about me? The silence had a different shape this time. He said, "You'd called yourself a liability," Okafor said, "because of the leg, Eve." He said he spent 45 minutes explaining why that was the stupidest thing he'd ever heard from someone otherwise reasonably intelligent. A pause. He said, "You didn't believe him, Eve." "I didn't, I know," read the letter. Maren. Okafor said, "Not an order, not advice, Eve. The gentle instruction of someone who could see from the outside what she couldn't quite see from inside." "Tonight," she said, and this time she meant it, Eve. She drove to the range at noon, Oceanside Public, Bay 7. Her own weapon, she needed to think. And she thought best when her hands were doing something they knew, Eve. She loaded the first magazine and let herself go back Helmand province. 2012, the heat first, always. Not temperature, history. Centuries of sun on the same dust, Eve. A heat that made the air shimmer and turned distance unreliable. She and Pruitt had been at the forward operating base 3 months when Sangin came through. She was 22, Eve. He was 32. The night before the mission he'd cleaned his kit, and then read a paperback western, missing its back cover, Eve. She'd asked once how he could read fiction while they were doing what they were doing. He'd looked up, because fiction is where things work out the way they should, he'd said, Eve. And I need to remember that's a possible condition. She hadn't understood that then. She understood it now. The mission was Overwatch, Eve. An assault team moving on a compound in Sangin district. She and Pruitt in position on a rooftop 200 meters north. The team would move at 0200, Eve. At 0155, he said something she'd never forgotten. Not tactical. Not about the mission, Eve. He said it the way people say things in the dark, when the waiting has stripped away the filters between thought and speech. "You know what I think about sometimes, Eve." She'd kept her eyes on the scope. "Know the first evaluation board, when you were saw cycling through 0317 qualification." He'd paused. 7 evaluators voted no. 3 voted yes. Another pause, Eve. "I was one of the 3. She'd absorbed that, "Why are you telling me this at 0155 the night before a mission?" "Because..." He'd paused. "I never told you, Eve. And I think I should have. You deserved to know someone was in your corner before you proved everyone wrong." The assault team moved at 0200, Eve. At 0214, she'd seen the shooter on the northern rooftop. PKM machine gun. She'd ID'd him in half a second. Called the target. Fired. The man dropped, Eve. Half a second too late. He'd already squeezed the trigger. The burst hit the rooftop 4 feet from Pruitt. Maren had been moving before the sound registered, Eve. Her left leg hit the raised edge of the parapet at full speed. She felt the shrapnel before she heard the secondary impact, Eve. Hot specific wrongness, traveling from her ankle upward, telling her immediately that something had changed permanently. She got to Pruitt down. Shoulder wound. Serious, Eve. Not immediately fatal if treated fast. She applied pressure with the hand that wasn't shaking. Called it in, Eve. Talked to him in the flat, steady voice of someone doing the only available useful thing. "Stay with me. I've got you. Stay with me." The medevac came in 11 minutes. He survived, Eve. And she spent the next 8 years carrying the weight of those 11 minutes like a stone in her chest. Because 11 minutes was close, Eve. Close enough that the version where it went wrong was always visible from where she stood, Eve. Her phone buzzed at 1400. Stellan Judd, she answered. "I heard about the board postponement," he said. "Is there anything I can do?" "There might be," she said, Eve. What do you know about the two women who transferred out of Willhite's unit? I know one. Sergeant First Class Morrow. Same posting for about 8 months. Ave. Would you put what you saw in writing? Silence, not hesitation. The sound of someone adjusting to the weight of a decision already made. Yes, he said. Thursday. Okafor's office, Maren. Okafor, Ave. Judd. On speakerphone. Sergeant First Class Delia Morrow. Fort Irwin. Her voice calm in the way things are calm after a long time of being not calm. I wrote the transfer request myself, Ave. Morrow said, both drafts. But the phrasing, the specific language about not being a good fit, that came from Willhite, Ave. He sat across from me and told me that was the professional way to handle it. A pause. He made it sound like my idea. He was good at that. Nobody said anything. He never raised his voice, Ave. Morrow said, never threatened. He just had this wet way of conducting evaluations where he'd create conditions that were slightly off, slightly wrong, Ave, and grade you on your response to the wrongness without acknowledging he'd created it. Another pause. After a while you start to think the wrongness is you. The office was quiet, Ave. I should have filed a formal complaint, Morrow said. You were 24 years old, Okafor said. Delia, Maren's voice. Direct, not soft in a way that read as pity, Ave. You did what you could with what you knew at the time. That's all any of us ever do. A long pause. Is it going to matter? Morrow said. What I say, is it actually going to matter, Ave? It matters, Maren said. He's good at his job, Morrow said. Almost like she needed to say it. I want to be clear. He's genuinely good, I know, Maren said, Ave. That's what made it so hard to explain. You can be great at the technical work and still be, she stopped. Still be doing damage, Maren said. Yes, those things coexist, Maren said. Ave, they always have, Ave. The call ended. Judd sat back. Let out a breath that had been in there for a while. Then, can I ask you something? He was looking at Maren. Pruitt talked about you at sniper school, Ave. More than he talked about most people. He paused. He said, the thing that made him vote yes at your evaluation board wasn't your score, Ave. Your score was already better than half the men in the room. He paused. Again. It was the way you reacted when evaluators gave you bad conditions. Gear not zeroed right, Ave. Wind data slightly off. Conditions quietly wrong. He said everyone else either complained or compensated, obviously. You just adjusted. Without acknowledging that anything was wrong, Ave. She was very still. He said he'd never seen anything like it, Judd said. He said it was the most honest display of capability he'd ever evaluated, Ave. Because you didn't need the conditions to be fair. You just worked with what you had. The office was quiet. He was right. Okafor said, not to be kind, because it was accurate, Ave. That evening, back porch, the light going, the envelope in her hands. She'd moved it from the kitchen table to her jacket pocket, sometime between the phone call with Morrow and the drive home, Ave. Her hands had apparently made a decision her brain hadn't formally approved. The handwriting on the front exactly as she remembered it. Print slightly too large, Ave. The handwriting of someone told their cursive was illegible who had overcorrected. She opened it one page, both sides. The same large print. She read it. She read it twice, Ave. And then she sat with it, the page in her hands. The California evening doing its slow work. The smell of sage coming up from the yard. She didn't cry right away, Ave. Not because she was suppressing anything, but because what moved through her wasn't precisely grief. Something more complex. Something grief was only one component of, Ave. The feeling of a question she'd been asking for 8 years, finally being answered in a voice she recognized. He wrote, "You are the best Marine I have ever worked with, Dave. Not because of the shots, because of what you do between the shots." He wrote, "Helmand was not your fault, Dave. I need you to hear that in writing, because I know you didn't believe it when I said it out loud." He wrote, "I think I should have said these things sooner. I kept waiting for the right moment, Dave. You know how I feel about waiting." She did know. He hated waiting. 11 words near the end. "Whatever you're doing when you read this, keep doing it." She folded the letter, Dave, put it back in the envelope, held it in both hands, one tear, just one, Dave. She registered it and let it go and didn't make a production of it, because that wasn't who she was. And Pruitt had known that and had written to her the way you write to someone who doesn't need the truth delivered softly, Dave. He'd written to her the way he'd always talked to her, directly, precisely, with the assumption that she was capable of handling it at full strength. She took out her phone, called Okafor, Dave. "The guest instructor position," she said. A pause. He said, "Tell Hargrove I'll do it." She heard him exhale. Slow, Dave, like a man who'd been holding something and had just been given permission to put it down. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay, I'll tell her." She hung up, left leg. Present, familiar. Hers, Dave. "Whatever you're doing when you read this, keep doing it." Dave, Friday morning. Okafor called at 07:15. "Willhite requested a meeting," he said. "With you. Not official. No witnesses." "Where?" she said. "Range 208. 1000, Dave." She put the letter in the top drawer of the desk in the spare room, not hiding it, keeping it. There was a difference. She closed the drawer and got ready for the day, Dave. Range 208 at 1000 on a Friday morning, IMPRI, which was the point. No instructors, no observers, no performance architecture holding either of them in shape, Dave. Just the California sun on the hardpack, the target frames at their distances, the smell of gun oil and dry sage. Maren arrived at 9:50. Willhite was already there, Dave. Standing at the far end of the covered deck, back to the range, hands in his jacket pockets. He heard her come through the gate, turn, Dave. And for a moment they just looked at each other across the empty range. No audience, no $100 bill. Two people who were very good at a specific thing, Dave. Standing in the place where that thing lived. Trying to figure out what came next, she walked to the deck, stopped 6 feet away. "You ran the course 4 times Wednesday morning, Dave," she said. He didn't look surprised, she knew. "Yes." "Any different on the 4th run than the first?" He almost smiled. "No, that's how you know the design was good, Dave." He talked for a while, not the way she'd expected. No defensiveness, no legal calibration. He talked the way a person talks at 0430, alone on a dark range, Dave. When they've been alone with something long enough that the veneer has worn through. He told her about Odessa, his father. Gulf War veteran. 2 tours, Dave. Came back with the kind of damage that didn't have a name in the early 90s. Just called how Dad is now. A house that ran on managed tension, Dave. Learning early that competence was the only safe ground. That if you were good enough at something, you were untouchable. "I joined the Marines at 18, he said, Dave. First time in my life where effort produced direct results. Where being good at something had an immediate outcome." He paused. "I was hooked." She understood the architecture of it, Dave. "When did it change?" she said. He looked at her. "From being capable," she said, "to needing to be the most capable." A long silence. "I don't know," he said. "Maybe they were never separate, Dave. Maybe I never had the first without the second." That's an honest answer. It's not a good one. No, she said. But honest and good aren't always the same thing at first. Morrow, he said, Eve. The name coming out like something heavy being set down. She was good, he said. Genuinely good. And I didn't run her out. I want to be precise about that. I didn't make a plan, Eve. But I made conditions. Conditions that were slightly wrong. And I graded her on her response to the wrongness and told myself it was rigorous evaluation. He paused, Eve. And somewhere between deciding to be rigorous and doing it, it became something else. Something that served you, Maren said. Yes. Without you having to acknowledge that it served you. Yes, Eve, quietly. Like a word that cost something, she looked out at the range. Hargrove has Morrow's statement, Maren said. I know. And Judd's, I know. He was quiet, Eve. I'm not going to contest it. She looked at him. I withdrew the training director application this morning, he said. Before this meeting. Not a trade, Eve. I withdrew it because I read Morrow's statement last night. I read it and I recognized every situation she described. From my side of it, every single one, the deck was very quiet, Eve. And I didn't like what I recognized, he said. A bird landed on one of the target frames. Sat for a moment, flew off. That's the beginning, Maren said. He looked at her. Of what? He said, Eve. Of the work, she said. Recognizing it is the beginning. Not the end, not absolution. You don't get to recognize it and be done. You have to recognize it and then change what you do with it, Eve. Every day. For a long time. How long does that take? He said. She thought about 8 years of carrying Helmand in her chest. About the letter in the desk drawer, Eve. About being told in writing in a voice she trusted. This was not your fault. Longer than you want, she said. Less than you're afraid, he nodded once, Eve. The slow nod of someone filing something under true, Eve. They stood for a moment the way people stand when the necessary things have been said and there's no obvious next move. Then Willhite said, Monday. You never looked at me. The whole course, Eve. Not once? No, she said. Why? She considered. The question deserved a real answer. Because you weren't what I was doing it for, she said. He was quiet. When the work gets hard, Eve. You have to know what you're actually doing it for, she said. Because the work doesn't care why you think you're doing it. It just requires that you show up correctly, Eve. I wasn't on that course for you. I was on it for Morrow, for Torres, for whoever comes after them. She looked at the range, Eve. And for someone who taught me that the work matters more than the audience. He looked at her for a long moment. Pruitt, he said. She didn't answer. Didn't need to. Judd told me, Eve. Willhite said. I asked who you were after Monday. I'm sorry. For your loss. He was a good Marine, she said. Judd made that very clear. Something close to a real smile. Then, Eve. He also said the thing that made you exceptional wasn't the technical skill. That you showed what you could do with whatever you were given, Eve. The morning light coming at a low angle across the range. 8 years of wondering whether Pruitt had known what it meant to her. He'd known. He'd told students about it. He'd written it down, Eve. He was a good teacher, she said. From everything Judd said. Yes. She nodded then. You're technically excellent. What you built Monday was genuinely hard. That doesn't need to change, Eve. She looked at him. What needs to change is whether you can be that good without needing everyone around you to be slightly less good, Eve. Whether your capability requires comparison to function or whether it can just exist on its own terms. He held that. I'm working on it, he said. Good, she said. Then, Eve, work on it where people can see you working. Not just alone at 0430 on an empty range. He looked at her. That's specific advice, he said, Eve. You're not the only one who's gone somewhere alone and run the problem, repeatedly hoping it resolves itself. She looked at the range. It helps. But it doesn't finish the work. He was quiet, Eve. Morrow, he said again. Different weight. If there's ever an appropriate channel, I want to apologize to her directly. That's not my conversation to facilitate, Maren said, Eve. That's between you and her. On her timeline, I know. A pause. I just needed to say it out loud. Now you have, she said, Eve. She left the range at 10:45, drove back toward Oceanside with the windows down, the marine layer burning off. The same drive she'd done 100 times. Different today, Eve. The way a road looks different after a conversation that shifted something in the middle of you. Okafor called at 11:30. Hargrove confirmed, he said, Eve. Training director position goes to formal search. Willhite's application withdrawn. Inquiry proceeding. A pause. And Hargrove wants you officially. Guest instructor. Advanced marksmanship, Eve. 8-week cycle. You design your own curriculum. She was parked outside a coffee shop on Mission Avenue. Engine running. Yes, she said. Okafor exhaled. Long. Slow, Eve. The exhale of a man who'd been holding something and had just been given permission to put it down. Pruitt would have said something incredibly dry about this, he said, Eve. She felt something move in her chest. Not grief. Not quite. He would have said about time and gone back to his book, she said. Okafor laughed. A real laugh. Georgia low and unhurried, Eve. That is exactly right, he said. She called Judd that afternoon. Hargrove confirmed the position, she said. I heard. A pause. I might have been in the adjacent hallway. Judd, Eve. Technically public space. She shook her head. Couldn't help it, did you know? She said. When you found me at the range Sunday, did you know about the training director situation, Eve? Honest pause. I knew about the application, he said. I knew about Morrow. I'd put some things together. And I'd been trying to find you for 2 years anyway, Eve. So when someone mentioned a woman at the Oceanside range who... He stopped. Yeah, I knew some of it. Are you angry? He said. She thought about it. Genuinely, no, she said, Eve. You brought me something that needed to be brought. The rest was already in motion. You just got me to the right place on the right day. Pruitt said you didn't believe in coincidence, Eve. Pruitt talked a lot. He talked about things he thought were important, Judd said. That was actually pretty specific. She was quiet. He was right about that. Thank you, she said, Eve. For the letter, thank Pruitt, Judd said. I will, she said. And meant it not metaphorically, as a practice, Eve. The ongoing act of carrying someone with you, in a way that honors the weight rather than denying it, Eve. Saturday, she spent it at the spare room desk, building the curriculum the way she built everything. Architecture before materials. What were the outcomes? What were the principles, Eve? What was the difference between a course that produced technically proficient shooters and one that produced Marines who understood what proficiency was actually for, Eve? Pruitt had taught her that the shot is the last 10%, he'd said once during a long hold in Helmand, talking quietly to stay calibrated, Eve. Everything before the shot is the 90 that makes the shot possible. The positioning, the patience, the read of conditions, the decision. Most people practice the 10, Eve. The 10 is the part that looks like shooting. She wrote that down, verbatim from memory, put it at the top of the first page, then wrote below it, Eve. What we are actually teaching is decision-making under imperfect conditions. The weapon is the context. The decision is the curriculum. Not how to perform under ideal conditions, Eve. How to perform under real ones. Sunday, she went to the range, Bay 7. Her own weapon. The same ritual, but different this time. She fired through the first magazine, Eve. And for the first time in as long as she could remember, she thought about only the shots. Not Helmand, not the 11 minutes, not the arithmetic of what had almost happened differently, Eve. Just front sight. Trigger press, 5 rounds, 5 hits. She reloaded, fired again. Briggs found her at Bay 7 at 11:30. I put in for advanced marksmanship, he said, Eve. Your cycle, she looked at him. 0600, she said. 3 weeks from Monday. Don't be late, he nodded, didn't smile. He understood this wasn't a favor. It was an entry point, Eve. Thank me at the end of the cycle, she said. If you still want to, Eve. 2 weeks passed. Full and functional and slightly too fast. She built the curriculum. 8 weeks. Progressive. The first 2 weeks entirely without a weapon in hand, Eve, which she predicted would be unpopular, and which she considered one of the curriculum's primary features, Eve. You cannot make good decisions with a weapon until you understand what good decisions look like without one. She sent it to Hargrove, got 3 sharp, clarifying questions back. Revised, Eve. Sent again. Hargrove's response, approved. Start date confirmed. 12 students, 12. She sat with that number, thought about Pruitt at sniper school in 2016, Eve. Standing in front of a cycle of students, talking about an evaluation he'd sat on 4 years earlier. Talking about her, carrying her forward into rooms she didn't know existed, Eve. She'd do the same, not about herself, but about the things she'd learned from people who wouldn't be in those rooms the night before the first session. Back porch, the Marine layer in, Eve. Thick and close. The kind of quiet that felt intimate, like the world had drawn a curtain. Leland Pruitt, 13 years she'd known him. First as an evaluator, then a colleague, Eve. Then the best spotter she'd ever worked with, which was the same as saying the person who trusted her most completely at moments when trust was the margin between outcomes, Eve. He'd voted yes in a room that mostly voted no. He'd carried her forward, and now she would carry him forward. That was how it worked. The actual arithmetic, not the grief arithmetic, Eve. The other one. The one that said, the people who believed in you don't disappear when they're gone. They become the ground you stand on. She stood on Pruitt now, Eve. She'd been standing on him for years without knowing the words for it. Now she knew the words Monday morning. 05:45, she drove to Camp Pendleton in the dark. Gate, Eve. Check in. Down the hallway, past the photograph, Helmand Province. Sand on everything. The ancient flat Afghan light, Pruitt. Third from left, Eve. Squinting at the camera with the expression of a man told to smile, who'd decided against it on principle. She stopped, looked at it, not the quick registering and immediate movement away, Eve. This time she just looked, the flat Afghan light, the sand on everything, the particular honest exhaustion in every posture, and Pruitt. Third from left, still deciding against the smile, Eve. Still absolutely himself. She reached out and touched the corner of the frame, just for a second. Then she kept walking, Eve. Range 208 at 05:55, 12 Marines, mixed, men and women, various ranks, various levels of proficiency, Eve. Standing in the pre-dawn cold with the alertness of people who didn't know what was coming and had decided to treat that as a feature rather than a problem, Briggs was there, Eve. Third from the left. She registered it without letting herself register it. She stood at the front of the range, no weapon in hand. They'd noticed that. She watched them notice it, Eve. The small puzzlement spreading through the group. The recalibration good. Puzzlement meant attention, and attention was the beginning. She looked at them for a long moment. 12 faces, Eve. 12 histories. 12 versions of whatever had brought them here, and whatever they thought they were going to learn. She thought about her father, the Arizona desert, Eve. A 7-year-old with a rifle too big for her, and 30 shots that missed by margins that should have been embarrassing and weren't, Eve. Because embarrassment requires an audience that responds to it. Her father hadn't responded. He'd reloaded and handed it back, Eve. That silence, that patient insistence on the next attempt, had been the most expensive education she'd ever received, Eve. She'd been paying it forward ever since, without knowing that was what she was doing. She looked at the 12 Marines and said the only sentence that had ever held up. "Good," she said, Eve. "Now do it again tomorrow." 12 faces, 12 varieties of confusion, because they hadn't done anything yet. "Exactly. That's the end of the curriculum," she said, Eve. "Everything we do for the next 8 weeks is working backward from that sentence to understand what it takes to mean it." She paused. "My name is Maren Voss, Eve. I'm going to teach you the 90% that most people skip." She looked at them steadily. "And I'm going to be hard on you. Not because I'm trying to find out who breaks, Eve, but because I already know none of you do." The range was quiet. The fog was lifting at the edges, the way it always did. In from the coast, sitting heavy for a while, and then, gradually, Eve, then all at once, the clarity arriving, the shapes resolving, the world finding its edges again. She looked at them. The compass rose behind her left ear, Eve. The letter in a desk drawer in a spare room in a rented house 3 miles from this range, the leg. Present, familiar. Hers 58 beats per minute. "Operational. Let's begin, Eve," she said.